300 people filled the grand ballroom of the Whitmore Hotel on a Friday evening in November. Crystal chandeliers cast white light across the ceiling. Round tables draped in pale blue linen held centerpieces of fresh white roses. Waiters in pressed uniforms moved through the crowd carrying trays of champagne. A string quartet played near the far wall. Everyone smiled. Everyone laughed. Everyone talked. Everyone except the man who had paid for all of it. Caleb Whitmore stood near the back corner of the room in a dark blue suit with a green tie, a glass of water in his hand, watching. He watched mouths move. He watched heads tilt back in laughter. He watched hands reach across tables to touch other hands. He watched two women lean close and whisper something that made them both cover their mouths with delight. He could not hear any of it. Caleb had been deaf since the day he was born. 34 years of silence. Not the peaceful kind that people talk about when they describe a quiet morning or a still lake. This was the kind of silence that sat on your chest. The kind that followed you into every room, every conversation, every relationship you tried to build. Tonight was the 6th annual Whitmore Foundation Gala, a fundraiser for children with hearing disabilities. Caleb had started it after his grandfather passed away. It raised more money each year. More people attended. More donations poured in. And every single year, Caleb stood in the corner and watched 300 people enjoy his generosity without once speaking to him. It was not that they were cruel. Most of them were not. It was that they did not know how. They did not know sign language. They did not know how to slow down and face him so he could read their lips. They did not know that a smile and a nod was not a conversation. It was a dismissal wearing kindness as a mask. A woman in a silver dress approached him. She touched his arm. She mouthed something fast, too fast, her lips barely forming the words before she turned away to greet someone behind her. Caleb nodded. He had no idea what she said. He set his water glass on the nearest table. He straightened his tie. He walked toward the side exit. The heavy door opened and closed behind him. Cool November air hit his face. He stood on the steps outside the ballroom, alone, looking out at the city lights. No one came after him. No one noticed he had left. If a man surrounds himself with hundreds of people and still feels invisible, does the silence live in his ears or in the hearts of everyone around him? If this story already has you thinking, subscribe and follow along because this is only the beginning. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever felt alone in a crowded room? He walked 6 blocks to a small Italian restaurant called Bello's. The hostess knew him. She always seated him at the same table by the window, table 7. She set down 2 menus out of habit, then quietly removed the second one when she remembered. Caleb watched her carry it away. He ordered the same thing he always ordered. Pasta with garlic and olive oil. Sparkling water. No dessert. He ate slowly, watching people pass on the sidewalk outside. Couples holding hands. Friends laughing. A mother kneeling down to zip her child's coat. He thought about his grandfather, James Whitmore. James had been deaf too. Born that way just like Caleb. But James had been different. James had filled every room he entered with warmth that did not need sound. He told jokes in sign language that made people laugh even if they did not understand the signs, because his face was so alive, so expressive, that the joy reached everyone. James was the one who built Whitmore Industries from a small tech repair shop into a communications company worth billions. He believed that technology should bring people closer together. He believed that no one should be left out of a conversation. He died 6 years ago and he left everything to Caleb. The company, the money, the penthouse, the foundation. But he could not leave Caleb the thing he needed most. Connection. A hand to hold. A face that looked at him and saw him, not his net worth, not his disability, not his silence. Just him. Caleb finished his pasta. He wiped his mouth with a cloth napkin. He placed $300 on the table as he always did, far more than the bill. He stood, buttoned his suit jacket and walked back out into the night. His driver was waiting at the curb. Caleb climbed into the back seat of the black car. The driver, who had worked for Caleb for 4 years, glanced in the rearview mirror. He gave a thumbs up, their routine check-in. Caleb gave one back. The car pulled away. Caleb leaned his head against the cold window and watched the city blur past. Restaurants full of noise he would never hear. Bars spilling laughter onto the sidewalk. A man on the corner playing a guitar, his mouth open in song. Caleb closed his eyes. The penthouse was on the 42nd floor of a glass tower downtown. 3 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, a kitchen bigger than most apartments. White marble floors. White walls. White furniture. Everything clean, modern, and completely empty of life. No photos on the walls. No shoes by the door. No dishes in the sink. No crayon marks on the table. No sticky fingerprints on the windows. Nothing that said someone lived here and was happy about it. Caleb dropped his keys on the counter. He hung his suit jacket on the back of a chair. He stood in the middle of his living room, surrounded by more luxury than most people could imagine, and he felt the same thing he felt every single night. Nothing. Not sadness exactly. Not anger. Just a deep, flat nothing that spread from his chest to his fingertips. The kind of nothing that comes from years of reaching out and finding no one reaching back. He sat on the couch. He pulled out his phone. 312 emails. 47 text messages, all business. 2 voicemails he would never listen to because voicemail was useless to a man who could not hear. He scrolled through his contacts. Hundreds of names. Business partners, lawyers, board members, assistants, accountants. One name that was not business. Daniel Pierce, his CFO and the closest thing he had to a friend. Daniel had learned basic sign language when he started working for Caleb 8 years ago. He was the only one who had ever bothered. Caleb thought about calling Daniel. Instead, he set the phone face down on the coffee table. He got up, walked to the window and looked out at the city below. Millions of people out there. Talking, laughing, arguing, whispering, singing. Living in a world made of sound. And here he was. 42 floors above it all. A man who had everything money could buy and nothing that money could not. He pressed his palm flat against the cold glass. Tomorrow was Saturday. He would go to Riverside Park as he did every weekend. He would buy lunch from the cafe near the fountain. He would sit on the same bench. He would eat alone. He did not know that tomorrow 3 pairs of very small hands were going to change his entire life. Amara Foster woke up at 5:47 in the morning, 13 minutes before her alarm, because Zion had climbed into her bed and was tapping her face with both hands. "Mama, is it park day?" She opened one eye. Her youngest triplet by 4 minutes was staring at her with a grin so wide it nearly closed his eyes. His blue hoodie was already on, backwards, and he had tried to put on his sneakers without untying them, which meant they were half on and folded at the heel. "Baby, it is 6 in the morning." "But is it park day?" Amara sat up. From the next room, she heard Nyla and Kobe already awake, already arguing about whose turn it was to feed the goldfish. The goldfish had been a birthday gift from Brenda, Amara's mother, and it had somehow become the most fought-over creature in their small 2-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn. "Yes," Amara said. "It is park day. But park day starts after breakfast, not at dawn." Zion pumped both fists and ran out of the room. She heard him crash into something, probably the hallway table, followed by a brief silence and then Nyla's voice. Zion broke the lamp again. Amara closed her eyes for 3 more seconds. 3 seconds of stillness. Then she stood up and started the day. The apartment was small. Tight really. The kitchen and living room shared one space. The kids shared one bedroom with a bunk bed and a toddler mattress on the floor. Amara slept in the other room, which was barely big enough for a full-size bed and a dresser. The walls needed paint. The carpet near the front door was peeling up. The hot water took 11 minutes to arrive, which she knew because she had timed it many mornings with growing frustration. But the refrigerator had food in it. The electricity was on. The kids had clean clothes and warm beds and a mother who would walk through fire before she let them feel the weight of what she carried. Amara was 30 years old. She worked as a teaching assistant at Jefferson Elementary, 5 days a week, 7:30 to 3:30, for a salary that covered most of the bills but never all of them. On Tuesdays and Thursdays after school she picked up shifts at a fabric store 10 blocks from the apartment. On weekends she made candles at the kitchen table from supplies she bought in bulk online, selling them at a neighborhood market when she could afford the booth fee. The triplets' father, a man named Derek, had left 4 months before they were born. No warning. No explanation. No forwarding address. One morning Amara woke up and his side of the closet was empty. His phone was disconnected by noon. She never heard from him again. That was 5 years ago. She had been 25, pregnant with 3 babies, working a part-time job and suddenly alone. Her mother, Brenda, had moved in for the first year to help. Brenda had bad knees and high blood pressure, but she cooked and cleaned and held babies at 3 in the morning so Amara could sleep for 2 hours before her shift. Those first 2 years were a blur of diapers, formula, fevers, and exhaustion so deep it felt physical, like carrying stones in her chest. But the kids grew. They got stronger. They got louder. They got funnier. And Amara found a rhythm, unsteady and imperfect, but hers. Nyla was the leader. She spoke first, walked first, and had opinions about everything from breakfast to bedtime. She wore a bright red jacket every single day regardless of the weather. It had been a hand-me-down from a neighbor's daughter and Nyla treated it like a crown. Kobe was the quiet one. He noticed things the other two missed. A ladybug on the window, a crack in the sidewalk shaped like a star, the way their mother's shoulders dropped when she opened the mailbox. He wore green because he said it was the color of trees, and trees were smart because they never moved but everyone came to them. Zion was the spark. He vibrated with energy from the moment he opened his eyes to the moment he finally stopped talking and fell asleep mid-sentence. He wore a blue hoodie that was slightly too big because he liked the way the sleeves covered his hands. 6 months ago, the community center on Fulton Street started a Saturday program for kids 5 and under. Part art, part exercise, part social skills. A volunteer named Miss Ingrid, a retired special education teacher, spent 1 hour each Saturday teaching the children basic American Sign Language. Most of the kids forgot the signs by lunchtime. But the Foster triplets did not. They practiced at home. They signed at the dinner table. They signed at the grocery store. They signed at each other through the window when Amara made them come inside. It was like a secret language, a game, a bridge to something they did not fully understand but loved anyway. Amara watched them practice and felt something tender move in her chest. She did not know why ASL had stuck with her children the way it had. But she was grateful for anything that made them curious, anything that made them kind, anything that taught them the world was bigger than their small apartment. Breakfast that morning was scrambled eggs, toast, and orange juice. Amara wore a green cardigan over a white shirt and jeans. Her hair was up in a high bun, her curls pulled back from her face. She looked tired in the way that mothers of 3 5-year-olds look tired, permanently, deeply, but beautifully. Coats, she said, pointing to the hook by the door. Shoes. Tied. Not shoved on, Zion. But tying takes forever. It takes 30 seconds. That is forever when you are 5. Amara pressed her lips together to keep from laughing. She knelt down and tied his shoes herself while Nyla and Kobe stood by the door, already ready, already impatient. They walked to Riverside Park, 12 blocks from the apartment. The November air was cool but the sun was bright and high, the kind of autumn day that felt like the sky was showing off. The park was filled with joggers, dog walkers, and families. Leaves covered the pathways in orange and gold. The kids ran ahead. Amara called after them to stay where she could see them. They ran toward the playground near the fountain, and Amara followed, carrying a tote bag with snacks, wipes, a juice box, and the book she had been trying to finish for 3 months. She found a bench and sat down. She opened the book. She read one paragraph. "Mama," Nyla called from somewhere to her left. "There is a man sitting by himself and he is doing the hand things." Amara looked up. Across the wide pathway about 30 yards from the playground, a man sat alone on a wooden bench near the small park cafe. He was tall, wearing a blue jacket over a white shirt. His hair was light brown. He held a sandwich in one hand and his other hand rested on his knee, fingers moving slightly. Signing. He was signing to himself, small absent movements, the way a person might hum without realizing it. Before Amara could say a word, Nyla was already walking toward him. Kobe followed. Then Zion. 3 small children in red, green, and blue, marching across the park toward a stranger, their little hands already rising. The man did not see them at first. He was looking down at his sandwich, pulling it apart slowly the way someone does when they are eating because they are supposed to, not because they are hungry. His eyes were fixed on the bread in his hands but his focus was somewhere far away. Nyla stopped 2 feet in front of him. She squared her small shoulders inside her red jacket. She raised both hands. And she signed, clearly and carefully, the way Miss Ingrid had taught her. "Hello." The man's hands stopped moving. His head came up. He stared at Nyla like she had appeared out of thin air. His blue eyes went wide. He blinked. Then Kobe stepped up beside his sister. He signed it too. "Hello." Then Zion, bouncing on his toes in his oversized blue hoodie, waved both hands and signed it with so much enthusiasm that it looked more like he was conducting an orchestra. "Hello, hello, hello." Caleb Whitmore sat perfectly still on that park bench and looked at 3 children he had never seen before, 3 children who had just spoken to him in the only language that was truly his, and something inside his chest cracked open like a window that had been painted shut for years. He raised his hands. "Hello," he signed back. Then he added, with a small smile pulling at the corner of his mouth, "My name is Caleb. What are your names?" The triplets looked at each other. Finger-spelling names was harder than simple greetings. Nyla went first, carefully forming each letter, and what Kobe went next, slower, his brow furrowed in concentration. Zion got halfway through his name, messed up, laughed and started over. Caleb watched them with an expression that would have broken the heart of anyone paying attention. It was the face of a man who had forgotten what it felt like to be seen. Not admired. Not respected. Not feared. Just seen by three small people who did not care about his money, his company, or his silence. They only cared that he could understand their hands. That was when Amara arrived. She had been watching from her bench, first with curiosity, then with alarm, and then with the particular speed of a mother whose children have just approached a complete stranger. She crossed the pathway in long strides, her green cardigan open and flapping behind her, the tote bag bumping against her hip. Nyla, Kobe, Zion, what did I tell you about walking up to people you do not know? The three of them turned to her with perfectly innocent faces. But Mama, Nyla said, he knows the hand language. Miss Ingrid said we should practice with real people. Miss Ingrid also said you should ask permission first. Caleb had been watching Amara's lips carefully. He could read lips well, though it was never perfect. He caught enough to understand what was happening. He lifted his hands and signed, then pulled out his phone and typed quickly, turning the screen toward Amara. The message read, "They did not bother me. Please do not worry. This is the best part of my week." Amara read it. She read it again. She looked up at the man on the bench, really looked at him for the first time. He was handsome in a quiet way. Clean-shaven, neatly dressed, but there was something in his eyes that did not match the expensive watch on his wrist or the quality of his jacket. Something lonely. Something familiar. "Are you sure they were not bothering you?" she asked, speaking slowly and clearly, her face angled toward him. He shook his head and typed again, "I am deaf. They signed hello to me. That has not happened with a stranger in a very long time. Please sit down. I would love to buy you all lunch." Amara looked at the three expectant faces of her children. Then she looked at the man. Then she looked at the cafe 10 feet away. "That is very kind of you," she said. "We would love that. Thank you." She did not hesitate. She did not make excuses. Kindness was being offered, and she had taught her children to meet kindness with gratitude, not suspicion. They sat at the small outdoor table near the cafe. Caleb ordered sandwiches, fruit cups, and lemonade for everyone. The triplets ate with the focused intensity of children who had burned through breakfast by 10 o'clock. Amara sipped her lemonade and watched Caleb sign with her kids. His signing was fluid and beautiful. His hands moved with a grace that made the language look like something between speech and dance. The triplet signing was clumsy and limited, but he was patient, repeating signs slowly, showing them new ones. He taught Zion the sign for funny. He taught Kobe the sign for tree, which made Kobe smile so wide his juice nearly came out of his nose. He taught Nyla the sign for brave. Amara watched all of this. She watched how carefully he looked at each child, how he gave them his complete attention, how he laughed silently when Zion tried to sign funny, and accidentally signed cheese. After the sandwiches were gone and the fruit cups were empty and the lemonade was nothing but ice, Amara typed on her phone and held it up for Caleb. "I'm Amara. Thank you for being so patient with them. They have been learning sign language at their community center and they love it. I am sorry if we interrupted your afternoon." Caleb read it and typed back, "You did not interrupt anything. I was sitting here alone as I do every Saturday. Your children just gave me the best afternoon I have had in years. I mean that." Amara felt something warm settle behind her ribs. Not romance. Not yet. Something simpler and maybe more important. Recognition. The feeling of looking at another person and understanding without explanation that they were carrying something heavy. "We come to this park most Saturdays," she typed. "If you are ever here, the kids would love to practice their signing with you." Caleb read the message 3 times. Then he typed back one word, "Please." They exchanged phone numbers. Amara gathered the kids who protested loudly about leaving. Nyla signed goodbye to Caleb. Kobe signed "See you." Zion signed what he thought was later, but was actually potato. Caleb signed goodbye to each of them. He watched them walk away across the park, 3 small figures in red, green, and blue, bouncing along the pathway with their mother in her green cardigan walking behind them. He sat on the bench for another hour after they left. He did not move. He did not eat. He did not check his phone. He just sat there, in the November sun, and felt something he had not felt in so long that it took him several minutes to identify it. Hope. Caleb could not sleep that night. He lay in his enormous bed in his enormous bedroom in his enormous penthouse and stared at the ceiling. The city glowed beyond the windows, 42 floors of distance between him and the noise he could not hear. He kept seeing it. 3 small children walking toward him across a park. Their hands rising. The sign for hello. The simplest word in any language, spoken by the smallest people, and it had cracked something open in him that years of therapy, business success, and charity work had not been able to touch. He reached for his phone on the nightstand. He scrolled to Amara's name. He typed a message, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. It was midnight. She had 3 5-year-olds. She was probably asleep and he was not going to be the kind of person who texted someone at midnight. He set the phone down. He closed his eyes. On Monday morning he called Daniel Pierce into his office at Whitmore Industries. The office occupied the top floor of a glass building in Midtown Manhattan. Caleb sat behind a wide desk made of pale wood. Daniel sat across from him, his coffee still steaming. Caleb signed. I need you to find out about a community center program on Fulton Street in Brooklyn. They teach kids sign language on Saturdays. I want to know who runs it and what they need. Daniel raised an eyebrow. He signed back, slower than Caleb but clear enough. Why? Caleb told him about the park. About the triplets. About Amara. He signed the whole story with hands that moved faster than usual, the way a person's voice speeds up when they are excited. Daniel watched him. He had known Caleb for 8 years and he had never seen this look on his face. Alert. Warm. Alive. I will find out everything, Daniel said, signing and speaking at the same time, a habit he had developed so meetings with Caleb felt more natural. By end of day. By 4 o'clock, Caleb had a full picture. The Fulton Street Community Center ran on a thin budget. The Saturday program served 40 children. The volunteer who taught ASL, a woman named Ingrid Larson, was 71 years old and had been donating her time for 2 years. The center needed new supplies, better heating, and updated books. They were behind on their lease. Caleb wrote a check for $200,000 to the community center. He arranged for it to be delivered anonymously. Then he sent Amara a text. Hello. This is Caleb from the park. I hope it is okay that I am reaching out. I wanted to ask if I could see the kids again this week. I have something for them. Amara replied 20 minutes later, of course. We are free Wednesday after 4. You are welcome to come by. Wednesday after 4, Caleb's driver pulled up in front of Amara's apartment building. It was a brown brick walk-up on a tree-lined block. The buzzer panel had half the names scratched off. The hallway smelled like old carpet and someone's dinner. Caleb carried 3 bags up to the 3rd floor. He knocked on the door marked 3B. The door opened and all 3 triplets tackled his legs before he could even step inside. Caleb is here, Zion announced as though the entire building needed to know. Amara stood behind them in a red sweater and jeans, her hair in its high bun, a dish towel over her shoulder. The apartment was small but clean. Colorful drawings covered the refrigerator. A stack of library books sat on the coffee table. A goldfish swam slow circles in a bowl on the kitchen counter. Come in, Amara said, stepping back to make room. Sorry about the welcome committee. Caleb smiled and signed thank you as he entered. He set the bags on the floor and the triplets descended like birds on bread. Inside, books about sign language with bright pictures. Art supplies, good ones, the kind with real pigments and thick paper. A set of magnetic letters. 3 warm winter coats, red for Nyla, green for Kobe, blue for Zion. He had guessed their favorite colors from the park. The kids pulled everything out, showing each item to Amara with wide eyes. Nyla put on her red coat immediately and refused to take it off for the rest of the evening. Amara watched her children. Then she looked at Caleb. She typed on her phone, "This is too much. You did not have to do this." Caleb typed back, "I wanted to. Please let me. It makes me happy." Amara read the message. She looked at her 3 children, warm in their new coats, already drawing with their new supplies, already signing the new words they found in the books. She typed back, "Thank you, Caleb. Truly. This means more than you know." She did not refuse. She did not argue. She did not let pride get between her children and a man who wanted to be kind. She accepted with the same grace she brought to everything in her life, openly and honestly. Over the next hour, Caleb sat on the living room floor with the triplets while Amara finished cooking dinner. He taught them new signs. They taught him their games. Zion showed him how to make a paper airplane. Kobe showed him the goldfish, whose name was Professor, and explained in great detail why Professor was the smartest fish in Brooklyn. Nyla showed him her drawings, which were mostly of cats wearing hats, and Caleb signed that they were the best cat hat drawings he had ever seen. Amara invited him to stay for dinner. Spaghetti with garlic bread. 5 plates on a small table that barely fit them all. Elbows bumped. Sauce dripped. Zion knocked over his water glass and nobody got upset about it. Caleb had not eaten dinner with other people in his home or anyone's home since his grandfather died. He sat at that crowded, messy, slightly sticky table and felt something expand inside him. Like a room he did not know existed had just been opened, and it was full of light. After dinner, while the kids watched a cartoon on the couch, Amara and Caleb sat at the kitchen table. She made tea. They talked through their phones, passing them back and forth. Amara told him about her job, the long hours, the commute, the way the teaching assistant salary never quite stretched to the end of the month. She told him about the car that had broken down 3 weeks ago and was still sitting in the lot behind the building because she could not afford the repair. She told him about the rent, 3 months behind, and the landlord who was patient but not patient enough. She did not tell him these things to get something from him. She told him because he asked and because he listened with the kind of attention that made her feel like her words mattered. Caleb typed, "Let me help. The rent. The car. Whatever you need. I have more money than I know what to do with and no one to share it with. Please let me do this." Amara looked at the screen for a long time. She looked at her children, curled together on the couch in their new coats. She looked at this quiet man sitting at her kitchen table, this billionaire who had just spent an hour on her floor making paper airplanes with her kids, and she made a decision. "Okay," she typed. "Thank you. I do not know how to repay you." Caleb typed back, "Come to the park on Saturday. Bring the kids. That is all I want." Saturday came and Caleb was at the park bench an hour early. He told himself it was because the weather was nice, that November sun cutting through the bare trees and making the whole park glow. But he knew the truth. He was excited. Not the business kind of excited, the kind that came from closing deals and reading profit reports. This was the kind that made his hands restless and his chest light. At 11 o'clock, 3 small figures in red, green, and blue came running down the path. Behind them, Amara walked in a blue blouse and jeans, her hair in its bun, her bag over her shoulder, a smile on her face that he could see from 50 yards away. The kids reached him first. Zion climbed onto the bench beside him. Nyla stood in front of him and signed "Good morning" perfectly. Kobe sat on the grass at his feet and opened a book from the set Caleb had given them, already reading. This became their routine. Every Saturday the park. Every Wednesday, dinner at Amara's apartment. Within 3 weeks, it was the foundation of Caleb's life, the thing he built his entire week around. 2 Saturdays after their second meeting, Caleb brought his car. Not the black sedan with the driver. His own car, a silver SUV he almost never used. He asked Amara if she and the kids would like to see where he lived. Amara said yes. The drive from Brooklyn to Manhattan took 40 minutes. The kids pressed their faces against the windows and pointed at everything. Bridges, boats on the river, buildings that touched the sky. Caleb watched them in the rearview mirror and his chest ached in the best way. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse. The kids stepped out and froze. Their eyes went wide. The living room alone was bigger than their entire apartment. The windows showed the city in every direction, a panorama of glass and sky. Then Zion said, "Can I run?" And Amara said, "Do not break anything," and all 3 of them took off across the marble floors in their sneakers, sliding and laughing and bumping into furniture. Amara stood in the doorway and looked around. She saw what anyone would see at first. The size, the luxury, the view that looked like a postcard. But then she saw what was behind it. No photographs on any surface. No shoes by the door. No marks on the walls. No magnets on the refrigerator. No clutter, no mess, no evidence that a human being actually lived here and was happy about it. The place was beautiful the way a museum is beautiful. Impressive but empty. She turned to Caleb. She did not type anything on her phone. She just looked at him and he saw in her eyes that she understood. He showed them the penthouse room by room. The kids claimed the guest bedroom immediately, jumping on the king-size bed until Amara made them stop. Caleb opened the door to his home office and Nyla pointed at the wall of screens and signed "What is that?" and Caleb signed back "Work," with such a flat expression that Amara laughed. They settled in the living room. Amara made coffee in his untouched kitchen. The kids spread their art supplies across his glass coffee table and began drawing. Within an hour, the penthouse had crayon marks on the table, juice stains on the couch cushion, and a paper airplane wedged behind a very expensive lamp. Caleb looked at the mess. He looked at the 3 children creating it. Something inside him relaxed, a tension he had carried so long that he had stopped noticing it. Amara sat next to him on the couch while the kids drew. She had been studying ASL every night after they went to sleep, watching videos on her phone with the brightness turned low. She was not fluent yet, but she was trying, and Caleb could see the effort in the way her hands moved, careful and determined. She signed, slowly, "Tell me about your family." Caleb's expression shifted. The warmth did not leave entirely, but something guarded came into his eyes. He signed back, slowly enough for her to follow. "My grandfather started the company. He was deaf like me. He was the only person in my family who understood what it was like to live in silence. He taught me sign language. He taught me business. He taught me that being deaf did not mean being less. He died 6 years ago. He left me everything. Amara signed. And your parents? Caleb paused. Then, my parents are alive. They live in Connecticut. My mother is Patricia. My father is Gerald. They are not bad people. But they never learned to sign. He let that sentence sit. Amara understood the weight of it immediately. 34 years and his own parents had never learned his language. They had communicated through notes, through gestures, through hired interpreters at holidays. They had sent him to boarding schools for deaf children when he was 6. Good schools, expensive schools. But schools that were far away from home. They loved me, Caleb sighed. I believe that. But they did not know how to reach me. And after a while they stopped trying. Amara felt tears press behind her eyes. She blinked them back. She signed with hands that were still learning but steady. I am learning for you. Caleb stared at her. 3 words in sign language. I am learning for you. Such a simple thing. Such a small thing. And yet nobody in his entire life had ever said it to him. He reached out and took her hand. Not a romantic gesture. Not yet. Just a man holding the hand of someone who had just said the kindest thing he had ever been told. They sat like that for a long time while 3 children drew pictures of cats in hats and paper airplanes sailed across a billionaire's living room and the November sun poured through floor-to-ceiling windows and filled, for the first time, a home that had never really been one. By December, Caleb was part of the foster family's daily life. Not officially. Not with any label or title. He was just there, woven into the fabric of their routine like a thread that had always belonged. Mondays he picked up the kids from school in his silver SUV because Amara's car was now fixed, a repair he had paid for without discussion. But the school was on his way to the office and the triplets screamed with joy when they saw his car pull up. Wednesdays were still dinner at the apartment. Fridays he took them all out, sometimes to a museum, sometimes to the aquarium, sometimes just for pizza in the neighborhood. Saturdays were still the park. Amara noticed the changes in her children first. Nyla's signing vocabulary had tripled. She was teaching other kids at school. Kobe had started drawing pictures of 5 people at a dinner table. A woman, 3 kids and a tall man with brown hair. Zion had announced at school that his best friend was a grown-up named Caleb who could not hear but could listen better than anyone. Brenda noticed the changes in her daughter. Brenda Foster came to the apartment every Sunday for dinner. She was 55, with silver-streaked hair she wore in short curls close to her head. She had Amara's same warm brown skin and the same direct brown eyes. She walked with a slight limp from her bad left knee but she moved through the kitchen with the confidence of a woman who had cooked 10,000 meals and intended to cook 10,000 more. On the first Sunday in December, Brenda sat at the kitchen table while Amara chopped vegetables and the kids played in their room. You are smiling more, Brenda said. I always smile, Mama. Not like this. This is a different smile. This is the kind of smile a woman wears when she has something to look forward to. Amara set down the knife. She turned to her mother. He is a good man, Mama. Tell me about him. Amara told her everything. The park, the signing, the gifts, the dinners, the penthouse that looked like nobody lived in it. The way Caleb sat on the floor and played with her children like it was the most important thing in the world. The way he looked at her sometimes, not with hunger or expectation, but with something quieter. Gratitude. Relief. The look of someone who had been holding their breath for years and just learned they were allowed to exhale. He is deaf, Amara said. Since birth. His parents never learned sign language. He has one friend. One. A man named Daniel who works for him. He eats dinner alone every night. He sits in a park alone every weekend. He has all the money in the world and nobody to share it with. Brenda was quiet for a moment. Then she said, And how does he treat you? Like I matter. And the children? Like they are the best thing that ever happened to him. Brenda nodded slowly. Then I want to meet him. Caleb came to Sunday dinner the following week. He wore a green sweater that Amara had told him looked nice in a text message, and he had changed into it 3 times before settling on it. He brought flowers for Brenda, pink roses and a bottle of wine even though he did not drink. Brenda opened the door. She was shorter than him by a full foot. She looked up at him with the evaluating gaze of a mother meeting the man who had been spending time with her daughter and grandchildren. Then she raised her hands. She signed, Welcome. Caleb blinked. He looked at Amara, who was standing behind her mother with a barely contained smile. I taught her, Amara said. Brenda signed again, slow and deliberate. I am Brenda. I'm happy to meet you. My grandchildren love you. Caleb's eyes filled. He blinked rapidly, looked at the ceiling, swallowed hard. Then he signed back, It is an honor to meet you. Dinner was loud, messy and perfect. Brenda had made her famous baked chicken with mac and cheese. Caleb ate 2 plates. The kids fought over who got to sit next to him. Zion spilled his juice again and Caleb caught the glass before it went off the table, which made Zion declare that Caleb had superpowers. After dinner, while the kids watched cartoons and Brenda did the dishes despite Caleb's insistence on helping, which she won by simply ignoring his offers, Amara and Caleb sat on the small balcony outside the living room window. It was cold. Their breath made clouds in the night air. The Brooklyn skyline stretched out before them, less glamorous than the view from Caleb's penthouse but more real somehow. Amara had been practicing all week. She signed to him, full sentences now, not just single words. "Tell me more about your grandfather." Caleb smiled. It was the smile he only wore when he talked about James. He was born in 1940, Caleb signed. Deaf from birth like me. Back then people did not understand. They called him broken. They tried to fix him. His parents sent him to a school that tried to make deaf children speak, that punished them for using their hands. But James refused to stop signing. He said his hands were his voice and nobody had the right to take his voice away. He built the company from nothing. Started fixing radios, then televisions, then computers. He believed technology should make communication easier for everyone, not just hearing people. He hired deaf employees when nobody else would. He created programs and donated to schools. Amara signed, "He sounds like an incredible person." Caleb signed, "He was the reason I survived my childhood. Every summer I went to his house. He signed with me all day long. He told me stories. He taught me about business and about life. He made me feel like I was enough, exactly as I was. When he died, he left me the company and a letter. The letter said, 'The world will try to make you small. Build something too big for them to ignore.'" Amara reached over and took his hand. This time it felt different from the first time. This time it carried something electric and tender, a current between two people who were starting to realize that what they had was more than friendship. They sat on the balcony in the cold December air and held hands and did not need words, spoken or signed, to understand what was happening between them. The first time Caleb signed, "You look beautiful," to Amara, they were standing in his kitchen on a Wednesday evening. She had come straight from work, still in her blue blouse and dark jeans, her hair slightly undone from the day, one curl falling across her forehead. He signed it without thinking. His hands moved before his brain could stop them, the way words sometimes leave a person's mouth before they realize they are speaking. And then it was there, hanging in the air between them. "You look beautiful." Amara's cheeks went warm. She looked down, then back up at him. She signed back slowly, "You are trouble." Caleb grinned. The romance between them grew the way real things grow, not in explosions but in layers. Small moments stacked on top of each other until they formed something solid and unmistakable. He texted her good morning every day. She texted him good night. He learned that she drank her coffee with too much cream and no sugar. She learned that he read for exactly 30 minutes before bed every night. He discovered that she hummed while she cooked, a habit she did not even realize she had, and he loved watching her mouth move to a melody he would never hear. She discovered that he drummed his fingers on tables when he was thinking, a rhythmic tapping that the kids imitated until all 4 of them were drumming their fingers at dinner and Amara had to put her hands over her face to keep from laughing. The triplets started calling him Mr. Caleb. Then just Caleb. Then one evening, without any prompting, Zion climbed into his lap and said, "You are my favorite grown-up who is not mama or grandma." Kobe drew a picture at school titled "My Family," and it had 5 people in it. His teacher sent a photo to Amara, who cried in the break room for 5 minutes before composing herself and going back to class. Nyla, who had opinions about everything, informed Caleb one Saturday that his penthouse needed more color because it looked like a hospital but fancy, and she was going to fix it. She arrived the following Wednesday with a bag of her drawings, and Caleb hung every single one of them on his refrigerator with magnets he bought specifically for this purpose. In January, Caleb took Amara and the kids to visit the Whitmore Foundation for Deaf Children. It operated out of a bright building in Lower Manhattan, painted in greens and blues, with wide windows and hallways filled with children's artwork. The foundation provided free sign language education, tutoring, counseling, and after-school programs for deaf children and their families. Amara walked through the building with her hand over her heart. She watched a classroom full of kids, ages 5 to 12, learning math and ASL. She watched a group of parents in a circle, practicing signs with a teacher, some of them crying because they were finally learning how to talk to their own children. She turned to Caleb. She signed, "You built this." He signed back, "My grandfather started it. I just kept it going." She signed, "Do not make this smaller than it is. You kept it going. That matters." He looked at her in the bright light of that building and felt something shift, the last wall inside him coming down. Not crumbling. Just opening like a door he had been leaning against for years, finally letting someone through. That evening he asked her about the candles. They were sitting in her apartment after the kids went to sleep. The kitchen table had a row of candles Amara had been making. Soy wax in recycled jars, scented with lavender, vanilla, and cedarwood. She had been selling them at a neighborhood market on weekends when she could afford the booth fee, which was not often. "I love making these," Amara said, speaking aloud because the kids were asleep and the apartment was quiet, and sometimes it was nice to use both languages. "I started during the pregnancy. Something about the process calmed me down. Measuring, pouring, waiting. It felt like the one thing I could control." Caleb typed on his phone, "Have you ever thought about selling them online? A real business. A website, a brand, shipping. Not just the weekend market." Amara laughed softly. "I have thought about it approximately 1,000 times. But thinking and doing are very different things when you have 3 kids, 2 jobs, and $47 in your savings account." Caleb typed, "Let me help you start it. I will cover the startup costs. Website, inventory, packaging, everything. You do the creative work. I will handle the business side." Amara looked at the screen. She looked at the candles. She looked at Caleb. "You have already done so much," she said. He typed, "And I want to do more. Not because I feel sorry for you. Because I believe in you. Please say yes." She said yes. She said it with a full and grateful heart, the way she had accepted everything he offered, without resistance, without suspicion, with the simple honesty of a woman who knew that receiving help was not weakness. It was trust. Within 3 weeks, Caleb had connected her with a web designer, a small business advisor, and a packaging company. The brand was called Foster and Flame. Amara designed the labels herself, simple and elegant, with her handwriting as the logo font. The first batch sold out in 4 days. On a Friday evening in late January, Amara came to the penthouse without the kids. Brenda was watching them. It was the first time Amara and Caleb had been alone together, truly alone, without the noise and chaos and beautiful distraction of 3 5-year-olds. They sat on the balcony. The city spread out below them. The January air was sharp and cold. Amara wore a maroon sweater and her hair was down, her curls loose around her shoulders. Caleb wore a blue sweater and could not stop looking at her. She signed, "I have something to tell you." He signed, "Okay." She signed, "I think about you all the time. Not just as a friend. Not just as someone who helps my family. I think about you the way a woman thinks about a man she is falling for. And it scares me because the last man I trusted disappeared. But you are not him. You are nothing like him. And I did not want another day to go by without telling you that." Caleb's hands trembled slightly when he raised them to sign back. "I have been falling for you since the day your children walked across that park and said hello to me. You and those kids are the first real thing in my life since my grandfather. I do not want to lose this. I do not want to lose you." The city hummed below them. The stars were invisible behind the city lights, but neither of them was looking at the sky. Amara leaned forward. Caleb leaned forward. Their foreheads touched first. Then their lips. The kiss was soft and brief, and it tasted like cold air and warm breath and the beginning of something neither of them had dared to want. When they pulled apart, Amara was smiling. Caleb was smiling. And somewhere in Brooklyn, 3 5-year-olds were probably still awake and driving their grandmother crazy, but that was a problem for later. February started with headlines. Victor Hale was 60 years old, a board member at Whitmore Industries for 15 years, and a man who had always believed the company would be better off with a hearing CEO. He had never said this directly. He said it in the spaces between his words, in the way he spoke too fast during board meetings knowing Caleb could not read his lips, in the way he addressed Daniel instead of Caleb, in the way he smiled with his mouth but never with his eyes. Victor had contacts at media outlets. He had used them before, leaking stories about competitors, planting favorable coverage for the company. This time he used them for something personal. The headline appeared on a Tuesday morning on a gossip website. "Deaf billionaire CEO's new girlfriend, gold digger or good Samaritan?" The article included photos. Amara and the triplets entering Caleb's building. Amara carrying a bag of candle supplies through the lobby. The kids in their red, green, and blue coats running through the parking garage. Someone had been watching. Someone had been waiting with a camera. The comments section was what you would expect from the worst corners of the internet. People who had never met Amara, never spoken to Caleb, and had no idea what their lives looked like decided they knew everything. They called her names. They questioned her motives. They reduced her to a story about money and access. Amara saw the article at 7:15 in the morning while packing the kids' lunches. Her phone buzzed with a text from a coworker who had seen it. She clicked the link. She read the headline. She read 3 comments before she stopped. She set the phone face down on the counter. She finished making the lunches. She zipped the backpacks. She braided Nyla's hair. She tied Zion's shoes. She kissed Kobe's forehead. She walked them to the bus stop. She smiled at the other parents. She waved at the bus driver. Then she walked back to the apartment, closed the door, sat on the kitchen floor and pressed her hands over her face. It was not the words. Words from strangers had never had power over Amara Foster. It was the photos. Her children's faces, visible and identifiable, on a website they had not consented to. Her kids, used as props in a story that had nothing to do with who they were. She called Caleb. He could not hear the phone, but the text-to-speech function on his end converted her voice message to text. Within 2 minutes he texted back, "I saw it. I am coming." He was at her apartment in 35 minutes. He came through the door with fire in his eyes and gentleness in his hands. He sat beside her on the couch and signed, "I am so sorry. This is my fault. My world did this to you." Amara signed back, "This is not your fault. This is someone else's cruelty. Do not take ownership of what they did." He signed, "I will fix this." She signed, "I know you will. But first, I need you to hear something from me." He waited. She signed, her hands steady and sure, "I am not going anywhere. Not because of a headline. Not because of comments from people who do not know us. Not because someone with a camera decided our life was a story they could sell. I'm not going anywhere, Caleb. I'm right here." He pulled her close. She rested her head against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, strong and steady, a sound he had never heard himself. She pressed her ear closer and listened for both of them. If someone tried to tear apart the one good thing in your life, what would you do? Would you fight for it or walk away? If you are rooting for Caleb and Amara, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you do not miss what happens next. Trust me, you do not want to miss what these two do when the world pushes back. That afternoon, Caleb called an emergency board meeting. He arrived at Whitmore Industries in a blue suit with a green tie, the same outfit he had worn to the gala months ago, but this time he did not stand in a corner. He walked to the head of the table. Daniel stood beside him, interpreting. Caleb signed and Daniel spoke his words aloud. "Someone on this board leaked personal information about my private life to a gossip outlet. Photos of a woman I care about. Photos of her children, who are 5 years old. I know who did it. Victor Hale has had contact with 3 media outlets in the past month through his personal email, which, as a board member, is subject to company communication audits." The room was silent. Victor's face went pale. Caleb continued, "I have built this company for 6 years. I have tripled its revenue. I have expanded its reach. I have done this while being deaf in a world that was not built for me. I have never once asked any of you for sympathy or special treatment. I'm not asking now. I am telling you that Victor Hale violated company ethics, endangered the privacy of a family and targeted children. I am calling for an immediate vote to remove him from this board." The vote was 9-1. Victor was out. Caleb walked out of that boardroom with his shoulders back and his head high. Daniel walked beside him and signed, "That was the most powerful thing I have ever seen you do." Caleb signed back, "I am just getting started." March came in soft and green. The trees in Riverside Park were budding. The cold was letting go. The city smelled like wet earth and new beginnings. Caleb had been carrying a ring in his jacket pocket for 2 weeks. It was a simple ring. A thin gold band with a single diamond. He had not gone to a fancy jeweler or asked for something custom. He had gone to a small shop in Brooklyn, 2 blocks from Amara's apartment, because he wanted the ring to come from her world, not his. The shopkeeper, an elderly man with kind eyes and steady hands, had asked Caleb if he knew the ring size. Caleb did. He had borrowed one of Amara's rings from her dresser during a Wednesday dinner, traced the inside circle on a piece of paper, and returned it before she noticed. Now the ring sat in a small velvet box in his left jacket pocket and it was burning a hole through the fabric. He had a plan. Or rather, 3 small people had a plan. 2 weeks earlier, Caleb had taken the triplets to the park without Amara. Brenda had arranged it, telling Amara she was taking the kids for the afternoon while Amara filled candle orders for Foster and Flame, which was now shipping to 14 states. At the park, Caleb knelt on the grass in front of 3 5-year-olds and signed, "I need your help with something important." Nyla's eyes went wide. She signed, "Is it a mission?" Caleb signed, "The most important mission." He told them he wanted to ask their mother to marry him. He told them he loved her and he loved them and he wanted to be a family. A real family. Together. Zion's response was immediate. Does this mean I get to live in the big apartment with the sliding floors? Kobe's response was quieter. He reached out and put his small hand on Caleb's knee and signed, "You make Mama happy. She sings more now." Nyla crossed her arms inside her red jacket and said, "I have been waiting for you to ask. What took so long?" Caleb laughed. Actually laughed, the kind of laugh that comes out as a breath and a shake of the shoulders for a man who has never heard the sound of his own joy. He taught them the signs. "Will you marry our Caleb?" 4 words. They practiced every day for 2 weeks, during car rides, during park visits, during the 20 minutes before bedtime when Amara was in the bathroom and they could practice in their room without being caught. Nyla got it perfect within 3 days. Kobe within 5. Zion kept mixing up Mary and Orange, which was not ideal, but by the end of the 2nd week, all 3 of them could sign it together in unison, like a small choir of hands. While the proposal was being planned, something else happened that Caleb had not expected. His mother called. Not called exactly. Patricia Whitmore sent a text message on a Thursday evening. It was the first direct communication she had sent Caleb in over a year. Most of their contact was through the family attorney or through holidays where they sat in the same room and exchanged pleasantries through notes on paper. The text said, "I saw the article. Not the gossip one. The one in Business Weekly about your foundation. There was a photo of you with children. You looked happy. I realized I do not know what your happy face looks like. I should know that. I would like to see you. If you would let me." Caleb stared at the text for a long time. He showed it to Daniel, who read it and looked at Caleb and said nothing because there was nothing to say that Caleb did not already know. He showed it to Amara. She read it and typed back on his phone, "You do not have to do anything you are not ready for." But she reached out. That is something. Caleb agreed to meet. The following Sunday, Patricia and Gerald Whitmore came to the penthouse. Patricia was 62, thin, with silver hair cut short. She wore a blue dress and pearl earrings. Her hands shook when she entered the apartment. Gerald was behind her, 65, tall like his son, his face lined and stiff with the discomfort of a man who had spent decades avoiding the thing he was about to confront. The triplets were not there. This was not their moment. This was Caleb's. Patricia sat on the couch. Caleb sat across from her. Gerald stood by the window, arms crossed, then uncrossed, then at his sides. Patricia raised her hands. They were clumsy. Unpracticed. She had clearly been studying, probably from a book or an app, and the signs were rough around the edges. She signed, "I am sorry." 3 movements. 2 words. 30 years late. Caleb watched his mother's hands form the signs she should have learned when he was a baby, when he was a toddler reaching up and signing milk, and more, and love, and she had stared down at him not knowing what he was saying. He watched her try now at 62, to cross a bridge she had let crumble for 3 decades. He could have been angry. He had been angry for years. But anger is heavy, and Caleb had spent the last 4 months learning that putting things down was sometimes braver than holding them up. He signed back, "Thank you for coming." Patricia's eyes filled with tears. She signed again, rougher this time, "I want to learn. I want to know you." Gerald shifted by the window. He did not sign. He did not know how. But he spoke, slowly and clearly, facing Caleb so he could read his lips. "I should have done better. I know that. I am here now. It was not perfect. It was not a movie moment where 30 years of distance melted in a single afternoon. But it was a beginning. A door cracked open. Light coming through. Caleb poured them tea. They sat together for 2 hours. Patricia showed him the ASL app on her phone. She had been practicing for 3 weeks. Gerald sat and listened, which was, for Gerald, a kind of effort that counted. When they left, Patricia hugged Caleb at the door. It was awkward and stiff and too short, but it was real. Gerald put his hand on Caleb's shoulder and squeezed. Caleb closed the door. He leaned against it. He pressed his hands over his face. Then he pulled out his phone and texted Amara. "Saturday. Riverside Park. The bench. I have something to ask you." Saturday morning, the first week of April, and the park was alive. Cherry blossoms had bloomed along the main pathway, turning the world pink and white. The sky was clear, pale blue and enormous. Families were everywhere. Kids on swings, dogs chasing balls, joggers weaving through the crowd. The small cafe near the fountain had its doors open and the smell of fresh coffee drifted across the grass. Amara knew something was happening. She could feel it the way you feel a storm before the rain, not in the air but in the way Caleb had been acting all week. Too calm. Too careful with his texts. Too quick to agree with everything she said, which was not like him because Caleb Whitmore had opinions about everything from the correct way to fold a towel to the best kind of pasta. He had asked her to meet him at the park at 11. Just the 5 of them, Caleb, Amara, and the triplets. Brenda had offered to come and Caleb had gently declined, which Brenda had accepted with a knowing smile that Amara did not understand at the time. Amara dressed carefully. A red dress, simple with a belt at the waist. She left her hair down, her curls falling past her shoulders. She looked in the mirror and saw a woman she had not seen in a long time. Someone who was not just surviving but looking forward to what came next. The kids were suspiciously well behaved. Nyla had brushed her own hair without being asked. Kobe had put on his green shirt without complaint. Zion was wearing his blue hoodie right side out for the first time in recorded history. "Why are you all so quiet?" Amara asked as they walked to the park. "We are being good," Nyla said. "You're always good. But you are never this quiet about it." The 3 of them exchanged glances. Nyla put her finger to her lips. Kobe looked at the ground to hide his smile. Zion started humming and then stopped himself. They reached the park at 11. The bench was the same bench where Caleb had been sitting alone 5 months ago when 3 small children walked toward him and signed hello. The same bench where the second place setting was no longer being removed because there were now 5 people who belonged at the table. Caleb was already there. Blue suit, green tie. He stood when he saw them coming. His hands were in his pockets and Amara could see from 20 feet away that his fingers were moving inside them, signing to himself, the way he did when he was nervous. The kids ran to him. He knelt and hugged all 3 of them at once, a tangle of red, green, and blue against his blue suit. Then he stood and looked at Amara. She walked to him. She could see it in his eyes. The hope. The fear. The way he held his breath. "Hi," she said. He signed hi. "What is going on?" she asked, smiling. "The kids have been acting strange all morning." Caleb looked at the triplets. He nodded once. Nyla stepped forward. Then Kobe. Then Zion. They stood in a line in front of their mother, 3 5-year-olds in red, green, and blue, their small faces serious and focused. And together, in perfect unison, they raised their hands and signed. "Will you marry our Caleb?" 4 words. 3 pairs of small hands. One question that held everything. Amara's hand went to her mouth. Her eyes filled instantly. She looked at her children, at their careful hands, at the words they had practiced in secret, at the love written on their small faces. Then she looked at Caleb. He reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out the small velvet box. He opened it. The ring caught the April sunlight. He signed, "I love you. I love them. I want us to be a family. Not someday. Now, will you say yes?" Amara was crying. Not the sad kind. The kind that comes from the deepest place in a person, the place where hope lives when it has been locked away for too long and is finally set free. "Yes," she said. She signed it at the same time. "Yes." Caleb slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. He pulled her close and kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. The triplets piled onto them both, a mess of arms and laughter and the sound of children who had just gotten the thing they had been wishing for. 3 months later, on a Saturday in July, they were married. The ceremony was held in Riverside Park, on the grass near the bench where everything started. White chairs lined the pathway. The cherry blossoms were gone now, replaced by the deep green of summer, and the sun was high and warm. Brenda walked Amara down the aisle. Amara wore a white dress with a red sash. Her hair was down, her curls decorated with small white flowers. She was the most beautiful woman anyone had ever seen, and every person in attendance knew it. The triplets walked ahead of her, carrying a single pillow between the 3 of them, upon which sat 2 rings. They took this responsibility with the gravity of a military operation. Nyla kept Zion on course. Kobe held the pillow steady. They delivered the rings to Caleb without dropping a single one, which Zion later described as, "the hardest thing I have ever done." Caleb stood at the front in a blue suit with a green tie. Daniel stood beside him as best man. An ASL interpreter stood nearby, but she was barely needed. Most of the guests had learned at least basic signs by now. The whole ceremony was conducted in both spoken English and ASL. Caleb signed his vows. "I spent 34 years in silence. Not the kind in my ears. The kind in my life. Empty rooms. Empty chairs. Empty hands." Then 3 children walked across a park and said hello, and their mother followed, and suddenly every room was full and every chair was taken and my hands had somewhere to belong. "Amara, you did not save me. You found me. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure you know how grateful I am that you did." Amara signed her vows back. "I have spent 5 years being strong because I had to be. Strong for my kids. Strong for my mother. Strong for myself. But strength gets tired, Caleb. And you gave me the most incredible gift a person can give, the chance to put it down. Not because I do not need it anymore, but because I do not have to carry it alone. I love you. My children love you. We are your family now. And you are ours. The triplets did not have official vows. But when the ceremony ended and the rings were on and the kiss was done, Nyla walked up to Caleb, tapped his knee and signed, "You are our dad now." Kobe signed, "We chose you." Zion signed what was supposed to be "I love you," but might have been "orange" again, and everyone laughed, and Caleb picked up all three of them in his arms, which was increasingly difficult since they were growing like weeds, and held them against his chest. The adoption papers were signed in August. Nyla, Kobe, and Zion Foster became Nyla, Kobe, and Zion Whitmore Foster. Caleb framed the papers and hung them in the penthouse hallway, right next to Nyla's drawings of cats in hats. Patricia and Gerald came to the wedding. Patricia sat in the second row and cried through the entire ceremony. She had been taking ASL classes twice a week for 2 months. She was not fluent. She might never be. But she could sign "I love you," and "I am proud of you," and "pass the potatoes," which covered most of what mattered. Gerald shook Caleb's hand at the reception. Then, slowly and carefully, with hands that had never signed before his wife started dragging him to classes, he signed, "Good man." 2 words. Gerald had never been a man of many in any language. But those 2 words were enough. Brenda danced at the reception. She danced with the triplets. She danced with Daniel. She danced with Patricia, 2 grandmothers from different worlds moving together under string lights, and it was the kind of moment that reminded everyone that families are not always the ones you are born into. Sometimes they are the ones you build. September. A new school year. A new home. The penthouse was no longer white and empty. It was full of shoes by the door, crayon marks on the table, sticky fingerprints on the windows, drawings on the refrigerator, and the constant motion of 3 children who had turned a museum into a home. Foster and Flame was now shipping to 32 states. Amara had quit her second job. She was considering quitting her first, not because she needed to but because the business was growing fast and she wanted to give it her full attention. Caleb supported whatever she decided. He always did. The Whitmore Foundation expanded its programs. A new wing was added for families of deaf children, funded by a donation Caleb made in his grandfather's name. The plaque on the wall read, "For James Whitmore, who taught me that silence is not empty. It is full of everything that matters." On a Friday evening in late September, the family went to Bellows, the small Italian restaurant where Caleb had eaten alone every night for years. The same hostess was working. She looked at Caleb. She looked at the woman beside him, the 3 children bouncing around his legs, the ring on his finger, the smile on his face. She grabbed 5 menus. She led them to table 7 by the window. She set 5 place settings. She pulled up a high chair, then remembered the kids were too big for that, so she brought a booster seat instead, then 2 more. Caleb sat down. Amara sat across from him. Nyla, Kobe, and Zion squeezed into the remaining chairs, elbows bumping, voices chattering, already arguing about whether to get garlic bread or cheesy bread, the answer being both, obviously. The waiter came. He looked at Caleb with the familiarity of years and the surprise of someone seeing something new. "Table for 5 tonight," the waiter said, and Caleb read his lips and nodded. "Fuck. Not 1. Fuck." Amara reached across the table. Caleb took her hand. The triplets were distracted by the breadsticks. The restaurant buzzed with conversation Caleb could not hear and did not need to. He signed to Amara, "I love you." She signed back, "I love you." Then Nyla looked up from her breadstick and signed, "I love you too." Then Kobe, "Me too." Then Zion, with a mouthful of bread, signed something that was either "I love you" or "more butter," but his smile made the meaning clear. 5 place settings. 5 people. 1 family. The man who sat alone at table 7 would never sit alone again.